Today I want to discuss a little bit on who Jesus actually was. We all know, Son of God, the only perfect human ever to walk the planet. We all know that part. But I want to delve a little bit into, it's going to take two videos, but I want to delve one into quite possibly what Jesus may have looked like, and then another video of his possible, we can pick up a little bit from the Bible what his personality was. But today I want to talk about the physical Jesus, what he looked like, kind of get an idea of what this man looked like, who he was, how he lived. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to burst a lot of bubbles here. First thing, Jesus was not a 6 foot tall white man. I'm sorry, but he wasn't. Jesus was a Jew, lived in Israel, which means Jesus was probably maybe 5'5", olive colored skin, curly beard, most likely shorter curly hair. So the famous painting or image of Jesus, as this, chiseled features in the face, this long flowing hair, throw those out. That's nowhere close. Now, Jesus was a Jewish laborer. He was a Jewish carpenter. And being a Jew, he blended in. He blended in with the crowd. If he was a 6 foot tall white man 2,000 years ago, he'd have stuck out like a sore thumb. In fact, not only did he blend in, was one of the crowd, it says in the Bible he also was not a very attractive man. It says in Isaiah 53, grew up before him like a tender shoot and a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. Now, why would God make his only son basically just kind of average on the side of maybe even homely? And I was trying to figure out why. I mean, European Jesus, as I call him, like I said, the chiseled features, the high cheekbones, very attractive. But Jesus wasn't. But why? And the simple answer to that is, think of probably top 5, if you would, the most top 5 famous people in the world. Okay, Marilyn Monroe probably makes that list. I mean, if she didn't come to your mind, well, she does now, right? Marilyn Monroe. To even her, 50, 60 years ago, even today, what's the one thing you think of when you think of Marilyn Monroe? The long blonde hair, pretty face, the epitome of woman, right? Now, aside from singing happy birthday to the president, what other things did Marilyn Monroe say? What had she done? We get so distracted by their appearance, by what they look like. We don't listen to what they say, which is exactly the reason why Jesus was not an attractive man. People were listening to his words, not oogling over what he looked like. Now, again, like I said, if Jesus was, as the term is, tall, dark, and handsome, the New Testament would be all about what he looked like. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, it would not be so much about his words, about his teachings. It would be more of his appearance. That's the blunt, honest truth. No one would have taken him as seriously as they did if he was easy on the eyes. They'd have been too focused on his looks. Now, I'm sorry, I lost my place. Okay. Now, in addition to not being very attractive, Jesus was tough. He was not a wimp. And I keep referring to what I call the European Jesus as, this delicate, looked really nice, everything, No. All right, you got to keep in mind, Joseph, Jesus' father, was a carpenter. In that time, the oldest child, the oldest male, and we're not going to go into if Mary and Joseph had more children. That's not for this discussion. Some think they did, some think they didn't, but that's not what we're discussing today. Okay, what we do know is Jesus was the firstborn male. Don't know if he had any more or not. That's beside the point. That's debatable. But Jesus was the male. At that time, the oldest son was trained by and took over the father's business when the father either was unable to anymore or had passed away. And we know at some point between Jesus about 11, 12 years old to when he started his ministry, somewhere in there Joseph died, which means Jesus took over his father's business as a carpenter. And at that time, obviously, they didn't have electric drills. They didn't have electric lathes. They didn't have all the fantastic equipment we have for woodworking today. Everything was done by hand. Everything. You wanted a table made, you had to go out, get your sickle, your hammer, and carve out the shape of that table. Everything by hand. Not easy work. By no means was that easy work. Everything was built by sheer determination and strength. So by that, it means even by today, people using modern equipment, if they're doing woodwork, you can tell their hands, they get nicks, cuts, splinters, calluses. So imagine 2,000 years ago, without that, what Jesus' hands must have looked like. So, carpenter, one of probably the hardest jobs. I'm not saying the, but one of the hardest jobs at the time. And so, his hands look like he'd been through a war. Now, when Jesus started his ministry, he walked everywhere. He didn't have a chariot. He didn't have, he walked everywhere. And, we're talking Israel, the desert. His skin had to have been just absolutely sunbaked. Absolutely horribly sunbaked. His feet, the sandals he wore. Our shoes today, no. Then all sandals was piece of leather your foot went on and straps over your feet to hold the leather to the bottom of your foot. That's all the sandals were. Just something to protect your feet against the hot sand. Which meant, you know, a piece of leather, probably that thick. So you felt every rock, every uneven surface. You basically were barefoot, just with something to, a little bit of protection from the heat of the sand. But with your feet open like that, all the dust, all the everything. So, which is why the foot washing was such a huge deal. You show up at someone's house to wash your feet because you've been through walking through the sand. So his feet were most likely very calloused because just a strip of strip of leather on the bottom of his feet protecting him just from the heat. That's all. No protection from the rocks, no protection from potentially any bugs on the ground, anything. So, all right, we've established he was a tough carpenter. He was absolutely sunbaked from walking everywhere. And his feet were most likely very calloused, very wore out. And he was not a 6 foot tall white man. So now, the final note, I know I'm getting long-winded and I apologize, but the final thing about Jesus' physical is after his trial and just before his crucifixion, when Pontius Pilate called for him to be flogged as punishment. Now, Pilate was hoping that would be enough to satisfy the Pharisees. We all know it wasn't, but now something to keep in mind. All right, these whips the soldiers used, they had a leather handle and anywhere from 6 to 8 leather straps. But in these leather straps, I mean, the leather straps would have been bad enough, but in these leather straps, as they wove them, they wove in chips of bone. Sharp chips of bone. These whips were designed for one purpose in mind: to strip the flesh from bone and cause as much pain and blood loss as possible. That's all these whips were designed for. In fact, these whips were so gruesome and so heinous, it was not uncommon for someone who'd been punished to die from their injuries from just the floggings, through just absolute excruciating pain, blood loss. The body could not take it and the person would go into shock. It was quite often the one being punished would die. Now, another testament to just how strong and how tough Jesus was. He took the flogging and still carried the gibbet of his cross through the city up to be crucified. The amount of just determination, the amount of just absolute sheer willpower and toughness in that act alone is absolutely astounding. And most of us, we get a toothache. We're down for the count. We get a splinter in our finger. Everything comes to a stop while we get a pair of tweezers trying to get that splinter out. Can you imagine the level of just absolute toughness this man had? So we kind of, that little bit, just a taste of the physical side, kind of what Jesus looked like, kind of give you an idea. And next video, like I said, next video I'm going to go into a little more, hopefully try and dissect Jesus's personality a little. Some of you may agree with me, some of you may call me a blasphemer, and because I'm not going to do it this video, I've already gotten long-winded. But the next one, Jesus, I don't believe walked around this way and just everything calm, quiet, and holy every moment of every day. I'll get into why, but until next time, have a good day.